How often have you been afraid? How often have you been terrified? We all have at some time or other. I remember when I was doing my big OE 55 years ago, and we were on a Kentucky tour of Europe and went to an amusement park train ride. This was something we didn't have in New Zealand, where it went slowly up and then speeding down the other side. I was absolutely terrified. They weren't screams of joy or even you have to scream, but that was really fun. Consequently, I've never been on anything since that remotely leaves the ground in a hurry. I was watching the TV program Minute by Minute last Tuesday, and for those locked in that cafe in Sydney with a gunman for all those hours must have been absolutely terrifying, and the consequences now, all these years later. Mark is an interesting gospel. It was probably the first one written around AD 55 to 65. Mark wasn't a disciple, but he accompanied Paul on his first missionary journey. He was obviously a keen learner and follower. His stories are short and to the point. Everything happens immediately. Our gospel reading today tells us how terrified the disciples were in the boat crossing the lake, and up came a storm. The Sea of Galilee is 680 feet below sea level and is surrounded by hills. Winds blowing across the land intensify close to the sea, often causing violent and unexpected storms. These disciples were seasoned fishermen who had spent their lives fishing on this huge lake. But during this squall, they panicked. Maybe it was rougher than usual. Maybe they were tired and just wanted a calm passage. They had, after all, been with Jesus, going all around the countryside, talking and meeting lots of people. The disciples panicked because the storm threatened to destroy them all, and Jesus seemed unaware and unconcerned. They faced a physical storm, but storms come in other forms too. Think about the storms in your life, the situations that cause you great anxiety. Whatever your difficulty, you have two options. You can worry and panic and assume that God no longer cares, or you can resist fear, putting your trust in Him to be at your side and to help. When you feel like panicking, confess your need for God and then trust Him to care for you. The disciples lived with Jesus, but they underestimated Him. They didn't see that His power applied to their own situation. Jesus had been with His people for 20 centuries, yet we, like the disciples, still underestimate His power to handle crises in our lives. The disciples did not even know enough about Jesus. However, we surely cannot claim the same excuse. We are all human, and it is easy to panic first and then think about Jesus. At our Probus meeting last week, we heard from Tony Hookard, manager of Stand, which was previously the Princess of Wales health camps. She was talking about the amount of 6 to 17-year-olds having problems. She said the boys seem to get very angry and hit out at anyone who gets in their way. And the girls seem to go into themselves and be quieter. These young people and their families are going through massive storms. This is totally across the board. There is part of their brains wired wrongly, and it takes a lot of help to get them on an even keel. They only have in-house now Monday to Friday, and they take these young people back home for the weekends because this then involves their whole family. And when they pick them up on Monday, the social worker is able to talk with the family about the goals that have been set for that weekend. Tony said that when anyone arrives, she rushes out of her office to welcome them and hug them. And she said the surprising thing is that often is said, "You smell nice," which she finds an interesting comment. It is a smell of love and acceptance that they believe is lacking in their lives. These young people don't believe they are loved. They just want to hurt everyone, families, teachers, everyone that comes in contact with them. What can we do? Tony said that if every one of us just said hello as we pass these kids, it's all about them feeling wanted by the community. And if enough of us did it, then it turns on a small part of their brains for love. She said we'll probably get abused or get the fingers, but she said don't give up. It was an amazing insight into the storms of life that these young people go through. But isn't that what Jesus was doing, even though he was asleep? The storms are raging, people are panicking, everyone is working frantically to try and save the day, that Jesus is taking time out of sleep in the back of the boat with his head on a cushion. It's not the first time that Jesus is asleep or resting, where the disciples have been looking for him and they eventually find him hidden away in silent prayer and meditation. And they say, "Come on, Jesus, everyone is looking for you. There's work to do." There are numerous occasions when the crowd are all seeking Jesus, all coming with genuine needs, and Jesus backs off and takes time out. This story started with just such an event. The crowds were there, and Jesus hops in the boat and says to his disciples, "Let's get out of here." Clearly, Jesus believed that he needed to look after himself. He knew that if he didn't take care of himself, he soon wouldn't be able to care for the others. That is a lesson for all of us to follow, to take time out, just to rest in God, just to sometimes say no. It is easy for us to say, "Look at Jesus," when the storm comes, but in that absolute moment of the storm, Jesus is often not the first port of call, just as he was with the disciples. Often the shock of what has happened or what we have been told, our minds go blank. But Jesus is in that blank. I was at the Waikato Hospital this week, and as we were a bit early, I did some people watching. And a mum walked past us with a beautiful young girl, probably about 5 or 6, skipping along, but she had no hair. And as I prayed for her and her family, I could only think of how terrified that family would have been when the storm hit them. We have all experienced storms. We have all been terrified at some stage with what has happened in our lives. The church faces storms, and as members of this church, we have to pull together. By crossing over to the other side of the lake, they were heading into Gentile territory, and this was a considerable controversy and pain for the early church. So our call is to get out there. It is to help in this troubled world. It's to talk to the many, many young people and older people that don't know Christ, don't know love, don't know fellowship. Paul, in our Corinthians reading, stood firm in adversity. He preached to his jailers. He talked of love. He talked of Jesus. How we act in such situations will reflect what we believe. So like Paul, let's look for ways to demonstrate our faith even on our worst days. Whether or not the situation improves, our faith will grow stronger. What a difference knowing Jesus makes. He cares for us no matter what the world thinks. So it is to cross over into places where we are not comfortable. Some of the comments after Probus were, "Oh no, I crossed the road as I don't want to get stabbed or abused." But this is not what Jesus did. So as members of this parish, we all need to go into those places that are not comfortable. God never promised us life would be easy, but he does promise us. He is bigger than any storm we face in this world, and he's always working for our good, even in the places where we can't see, even in the circumstances that we don't fully understand. He is with us right in the midst of all we walk through. Let us pray. Lord, thank you that our comfort abounds through Christ. Nothing in the world can bring us the comfort and peace that you alone can offer. Thank you that you understand our trials and you care. Through our own struggle and pain, help us to be your vessels to offer comfort and strength to others who are hurting.